legal service don't follow the law, and why aren't we talking about the deductions that don't follow the law rather than the deductions that did follow?
There you go. Governor Sununu, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Melissa. Take care.
So we're keeping a close eye. We promise this is going to happen. Herndon, Virginia, expecting to hear from Trump momentarily. Going to talk with a group of retired military officers, and the event has begun. We expect Trump in there anytime. We'll bring that to you live. Plus, a warning from Trump about voter fraud in America come November. Why he's urging his supporters to prevent it. Listen.
I hear too many bad stories, and we can't lose an election because of you know what I'm talking about. So go and vote, and then go check out areas.
Insurance should be a lot of things. It should see your business the way you see your business. We think insurance should come from a friend, someone you trust, because actions speak louder in person. When it's right, we think insurance should love what you love. The Cincinnati Insurance Companies, everything insurance should be. Visit CINFIN.com and talk to your local independent agent about what matters to you.
It was getting to be a struggle to get in and out of the tub.
Yeah, we were really worried about falling.
And we needed a solution to stay safe in our own home.
So we got an American Standard walk-in bath.
American Standard is celebrating over 140 years in business with our best offer on our Liberation walk-in baths.
They have a lifetime warranty on the bath, the installation, including the labor. I've never heard of that before.
American Standard has the only walk-in bath with over 20 comfort and safety features, including an ultra-low entryway, 44 massaging jets to help relieve aches and pains, and our patented quick drain technology, which drains your bath in less than 2 minutes. Other brands can leave you sitting in the cold. So call now for your free information kit. For a limited time, get $1,500 in savings, including a free American Standard right height toilet.
Don't delay. Call 1-800-425-8414 for your free information kit, $1,500 in savings, including a free toilet. That's 1-800-425-8414.
The end of quarter clearance sales going on now at Lumber Liquidators. That means it's your chance to get an incredible deal on pre-finished hardwood from $149, bamboo from $129, North American and European laminate from 39 cents and more, plus special financing. Get to the end of quarter clearance sale at Lumber Liquidators by Tuesday.
The books and records, we put them all under a microscope, worldwide.
We don't have those kind of resources.
I know. That's why we're going to bring in BDO.
People who know BDO.
China exploiting America? Trump says the U.S. is losing to the Eastern power. Now, Waters World heads to Chinatown to get reaction. Don't miss The Factor.
Come on, baby!
Chewy.com makes shopping for your pet easy. Shop online for all the brands you love at prices you love. Save now on top brands like Blue Buffalo, Nutro, Natural Balance, Greenies, Tidy Cats, Purina Pro Plan, and more. Everything you need for your pet at amazing prices every day. Plus free 1 to 2 day shipping. You heard it right. The brands you love at prices you love. Visit Chewy.com now and save 20% on your first order.
You won't see these folks at the post office. They have businesses to run. They have passions to pursue. How do they avoid trips to the post office? Stamps.com. Mail letters. Ship packages. All the services of the post office right on your computer.